Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Vered Kogan, and I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to have a very special guest with us today, Karl Dawson. Karl is one of the original 28 EFT founding masters trained personally by Gary Craig. And for those of you who are not yet familiar with EFT, we'll talk a little bit more about that today. It stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and it is a set of very powerful psychosensory techniques that restore your mind-body balance for optimal health and performance. Over the last 18 years, Karl has personally taught over 8,000 EFT and Matrix Reimprinting practitioners, holding trainings in 27 countries worldwide. He is a Hay House author of two best-selling books. I have one of them here, and it is excellent. Transform Your Beliefs, Transform Your Life. He's also the director of EFTMRA, which stands for the Emotional Freedom Techniques Matrix Reimprinting Academy, the largest EFT tapping training body worldwide with over 10,000 members. Karl has presented at conferences worldwide alongside some of the most well-known people in the self-help industry, such as Louise Hay, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Robert Holden, Greg Braden, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, and many others. Thank you so much, Karl, for being here with us today.
Rowan, it's wonderful to be with you. And thank you for your passion for Matrix Reimprinting, which you've shared with me. And I know it's therapy that you use on a daily basis. And yeah, hi to your audience. And yeah, I'm humbled to be with you. I've heard the list of your previous interviews and some amazing people there, some of my heroes. So it's wonderful to be with you.
Thank you. And I really am passionate about this, which is why I'm so excited that the audience will get to hear from you today. I use Matrix Reimprinting and EFT tapping in my own life every day and with clients. And so would you be willing, to kind of start us off with a little bit about you, your background? How did you even get into doing this line of work?
Yeah, of course. Well, the history goes back around, well, it's about 20 years. At this point in 2002, I was going through what I'd refer to as a dark night of the soul, where everything's going wrong in your life. I was riddled with pain, everywhere from my neck, my shoulders. I had a prolapse disc in my lower back. And and then I went through divorce, and the whole of life just seemed to fall apart around that time. I wasn't a practitioner previously. I had no intention of being. I was always kind of, I suppose, seek for information and truth. I wouldn't say incredibly spiritual, but I had spiritual interests. And when all this happened and I got divorced, the health system in the UK, everything I went for, can you help me with my back problem? No. Can you help with the eating issues, as in like allergies and stomach problems? No. So I just gave up on the health system and then started to look elsewhere. And I was very fortunate to come across EFT very quickly. So initially, when I found EFT, it was purely for my own recovery. But as I had more and more sessions and then learned about EFT myself, and then suddenly one day I realized actually I'd like to help other people. I think that's how it happens with many, many practitioners. We start off as healing ourselves, and then we realize we want to help other people. A few years in, synchronicity, I had 3 new clients in one day. All 3 new clients were teachers, and I had a little chat with myself and quite auditory. And I realized it was time to actually start teaching EFT. And then the breakthrough came, well, first of all, Gary Craig did this master's program, which was, it ran for 2-3 years, around 2006. Incredibly difficult to get on the program. There was only, as you mentioned, at the beginning, 28 people actually completed the program, and that kind of put us up into a whole new level. We was his chosen practitioners and trainers. So I started, the trainings I did got bigger. I started to travel. And my sister Caroline, who had been a nurse in Australia she left when she was 23, and she's a bit older than me. So for 25 so years she's been a nurse, I started to talk about EFT, and first of all, she thought I was just crazy. It's like, how does tapping on yourself? I'm a nurse. I work with doctors, but she became more and more interested and more disillusioned with the medical system. And so it got to 2007. She invited me over to Australia. Said she'll get a group of nurses together. So come over to Melbourne. Be nice to catch up. I've not seen her for quite a few years. And it was on that course that the first breakthrough came to with the first session of Matrix Reimprinting. And then since that day, for the last 15 years, it's just grown and grown from our first book, and then all the advances into the second book, and it's where it is now. So yeah, that's kind of a long story short. But it's completely transformed my life. I'm pain free now. After a couple of years, I thought I'd have to live with this, certainly the lower back pain for the rest of my life. And I always talk about when my son was 7, he's 28 now. He used to ask me to play like football and cricket with him, and I'd say, Daniel, don't ask me. If I'm not in pain today, if I play these sports with you, even just a 7-year-old, I'll be in agony. So don't ask me. 20 years later, I play squash, which is a very unforgiving game, especially the way I play it, darting around the court from like a headless chicken. So it's completely changed my life in many ways. As I mentioned, I got divorced. I was divorced for 10 years. I actually remarried my wife after 10 years, and we've been together for another 10 years. In a very different relationship now, basically because of my beliefs are different. The way I see myself is different. So, just that everything's changed. I can put that down to a lot with Gary Craig. First of all, with EFT, and it literally not only saved my life, actually give me a purpose in life, and it's been an amazing life. As mentioned, traveled around the world teaching. Just this year, did some courses in India, in Mumbai and Bangalore, and just a couple of weeks ago, I came back from Paris and Lille, where I did some big courses there. So it's just incredible to just actually teach other people these skills. Other practitioners, and they can help many people. So I feel like I have a blessed life. I really do.
Well, I'm so excited that life took you down this path. And I think that a lot of the people listening might be in that place now, maybe a physical pain, maybe a
So many
divorce,
people.
or some other transition in their life, expected or unexpected. And so what you're sharing gives hope, right? That it is possible to not
Absolutely.
live with that pain, or emotional, physical, mental pain for the
Well,
rest
there's
of our
so
life.
much anxiety and depression these days, especially with COVID and the extra pressures it put on people. So there's huge amount. I'm sure in America, certainly in the UK, the psychological system has just absolutely collapsed with the need. That's just not there's so many people with anxiety, depression, and other psychological issues, and there's no help. These techniques are so simple to learn and so effective.
Exactly, which is why I would love for you to share what exactly is, first of all, EFT, for those people who are not yet familiar with that. How does it work? And what is matrix reimprinting, right? And kind of what's the difference between the two?
Okay. So, well, first of all, we'll start with EFT. And just to be clear, it's like matrix reimprinting is not a replacement for EFT. I still teach EFT before I teach people matrix. People need to know EFT. It's just a different way of using EFT. So the way I've come to understand EFT is quite simple. When we have a trauma, literally part of the cell splits off, and we hold that memory in our subconscious with everything that happened that day. Every thought, feeling, emotion, sensation, what's going on in our nervous system. And what happens when we have a similar experience, or we revisit that memory of that trauma, we revisit the energy. Okay? And so, you'll get somebody to remember some traumatic event from a past time. First of all, I feel like this sick feeling in my stomach, or this tightness in my throat, or this beating in my chest. And basically, that is what you experienced with the original trauma. Okay, and by re-experience that, it's kind of a warning signal subconsciously that this might be a dangerous situation that you're in now. So it's kind of a warning situation. The way EFT works, and so we see that information is coming back from our subconscious fields back into our body via the meridians. Of course, everybody's heard of meridians, part of acupuncture, and typically most of the meridian lines are connected with an organ. So you'll have information going into the heart, into the spleen, into the liver, into the kidneys. Some are just flows of energies. But that's where EFT is, that you look at a memory, you re-experience what happened, and the tapping just kind of presses a reset button. It just switches off the energy. So now you can look at that traumatic memory, and when you look at the memory, you no longer feel that negative energy. And also, what's really important to understand about trauma is, whilst to the conscious mind, the trauma is over and it's in the past, to the subconscious mind, we stuck in that moment still in our subconscious. You'll hear people often say they froze. We absolutely, through trauma, you freeze. And literally, part of yourself is stuck in that moment in your subconscious. And with the tapping allows that memory to actually subconsciously be in the past. So once you've done a session of EFT, people say, that memory, it's like, it's over now, it's finished. I was just a child, I was doing the best I could, it wasn't my fault. They'll get cognitive changes. And also, it's like, it's over now. And that's, and it's so simple. And, I don't want to talk negatively about talk therapy, but to me, the limitation with talk therapy is, it's all, you can understand what happened and why and when and who did what to whom. But understanding that doesn't change it, because when you have a trauma, it goes into the subconscious, and the subconscious, it's estimated, is running in excess of 95% of everything you do every day on these early programs and traumas and the beliefs that we create at this time of the trauma. So that's basically how EFT works. It's just incredibly good at trauma resolution. What I found with Matrix, where it takes it a step further, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, when you have a trauma, you always make a belief decision. Always. It's survival. In that moment when you freeze, perceptually, whether it's you're about to have a car crash, or parents saying to a young child, "Go away! I've not got time for you. You bad child. You're evil child." That is a trauma as well. And in that moment, when you feel powerlessness and the threat to survival, which of course is perceptual to your ability to deal with trauma and your age, in that moment when you freeze, you always make a very concrete decision, which goes incredibly hardwired into the subconscious. You can't forget it ever. In fact, the best way to learn anything, traumatize yourself. You'll never forget it. Yeah? So it's like the antelope on the plains of Africa. You've got one chance to learn that lion will kill you. You don't get a second chance. So these traumas go into our subconscious, and it's actually the language is subconscious for everybody. Doesn't matter whether you're kinesthetic or auditory, like I am. For everybody, the language of the subconscious is images to which we give meaning. So these traumas have meaning. The world's dangerous. I can't trust people. People will attack me, and hundreds of other potential beliefs. Once it's there, it's stuck. And from that point, you'll spend the rest of your life attracting similar situations. You'll create situations, and when things happen, you'll stamp your belief on every subsequent event, whatever you made on these original events. I'll give you a quick example. I worked with a guy. He had a car crash 5 years earlier. He had PTSD. As we worked through the car crash with Matrix, he kind of saw himself like this. And I said, okay, tune into that energy. Where does that take you back to? So I see myself, I'm in the house, I'm 6 years old, I'm in the corner like this, and my dad's hitting me with a stick. I said, what's the connection? Well, there's a belief that connects it together. He said, yeah, I have this belief that bad things will happen to me and it's not my fault. So, you can see that the events is not like law of attraction, the car crash, but when the car crash happens, he'll make that car crash mean the same thing as he's made many, many events through his life mean bad things will happen. It's not my fault. So that's what we talk about, how we look for proof of, and that's what we all do. So as these events keep happening, we globalize this issue, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which then creates more and more stress. We go into fight and flight, which is basically stress. And the more you spend in fight and flight, then eventually, it's affecting your cells, your biology, your chemistry, your hormones, even down to your DNA. People understand Bruce Lipton's work with epigenetics. If you're in stress for a long time, you'll even start to read different DNA. And now, when all these changes take place, you've got a disease. So Matrix takes it a step further than just trauma resolution. We actually imagine that we send our consciousness back in time to the moment where we froze. And we use the tapping to resolve the trauma. So that's the EFT part. But depending on the belief that we made, we allow the memory to then complete in a positive way. So, for example, if it's a simple example, the child thinks they're unlovable, and you go back to memory when they're 2, 3 years old, because mum shouted at them one day, we could go back to that moment where they froze, we tap on the echo, allow that echo to move through that moment, but then we would let it complete that mum gave the child a hug. So we've actually completed the memory. And it's not about denying the events happen. I could spend an hour just talking about it's not denial of the events. It's just changed the perception. We allow this creative completion. So what you have now is a positive memory where you feel loved, and that new picture subconsciously says that now I'm loved by my mother. And then we can go to other memories where they reinforce that negative belief and allow that to complete in a positive way. So, to sum it up, EFT, great for trauma resolution, but the memory basically stays the same, but you don't have the negative effects. With Matrix, we resolve the trauma, but also we allow the completion of the memory in a positive way. So then we change those really nasty negative beliefs that control our lives. So I hope that makes sense, Vered.
It does. And if it's all right, I'd love to share my first experience with
Please
Matrix
do.
Reimprinting as part of the certification training. So um, there was something that was said at the training that kind of reminded me of a memory. And of course, as we know, there are no accidental things that are said or seen, right? So there was something, I believe, guiding me to go to that particular memory, which was not a
Yeah.
conscious memory for me. But something came up and it reminded me of a time when I was probably about 5 or 6, and I was in ballet class. And my father, who had worked a lot and didn't usually come to visit me or pick me up in ballet class, showed up one day. And I remember being there, right, holding the ballet bar and my leotard and everything, and my dad being next to me, and I peed by accident, right? I was at an age
Yeah.
where that should not happen, right? And I
Yeah.
was completely mortified. Now, I hadn't really thought about that consciously at all.
Yeah. And it
So
would appear a positive event, then that's actually come to pick you up. Yeah, it seems positive. Yeah.
So I went into the matrix. We'll talk about what that means soon. And as you had just said, I had completely changed the perception. I had realized I had made a belief there was a great deal of shame. So with tapping, release the shame. And then I had a belief that there's something wrong with me, right? Something is wrong with me, right? Because I shouldn't at this age have that. And changed the memory. And I have to tell you, Karl, that it was changed to kind of my dad taking me to ice cream, and we had a date, and it was such a positive picture. And it's just phenomenal how amazing this works.
Yeah. And does it really matter that, you went from this negative memory where you weed to creating this positive memory? It doesn't really matter. When we talk about trauma memory is false memory anyway. Because when you went to fight and flight, everything looks dangerous and threatening. You misperceive the look on people's faces and what they say. Because when you're in fight and flight, everything, it has to look dangerous. It's like, where's the tiger? Where's the danger? And I'm sure everybody listening will understand this, that when they're in fight and flight, everything looks threatening to them. You feel isolated, completely on your own, and everything's dangerous. So you misread that. And also, every time you revisit this memory, there's a neurobiologist called Dr. Karim Nader who's proven every time you go and revisit a memory, you actually change it naturally. So what we're doing here is purposefully allowing these, completion in a very positive way, and you can see how positive that memory is for you now, with a completely different meaning. So it's like, do you want to keep these old memories with our stupid old meanings that are just ruining your life, or do you want to create these beautiful positive memories with positive meanings? So, that's what we can do, and it's so easy. And as a practitioner, it's incredibly uplifting. I'm sure you've had many sessions where, I can imagine with talk therapy, the psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor has got to sit there and listen to the stories over and over. It must be very depressing and very, demoralizing to spend your whole day. Whereas with the work we do, especially with Matrix, you have a session, as a practitioner, you feel so uplifted because you end up with these beautiful memories. You see the changes in the clients and their expressions and their, you see the power of creating these beautiful new memories.
Yeah, just just yesterday, one of my clients, we did some matrix reimprinting, and he had gone back to a memory when he was almost 8. And without going into the details of the actual memory, or the actual event, he had made a decision that he doesn't love himself. And within minutes, that was completely transformed. And what's interesting is that he talked about back pain. He'd had some back pain. He wasn't able to bend down all the way. And he said afterwards, I got to test something. So he bends down and he was able to reach all the way down. He said, wow, this is mind blowing. I haven't been able to do this in so long without pain. It's like, immediately something was released in his body when he had released that belief.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get almost like miraculous changes. And I'm certainly not going to say that every session you're going to get miraculous changes, but every session you certainly get resolution on these memories. When you come to understand that, all of our ills, psychological, physical, are down to these traumatic memories and their repercussions over the years, it just stands to reason if we can resolve them and improve them, that, some issues, it could be many sessions, especially with long-term serious disease. There's lots of things you've got to change there because it's a culmination of many years and many different events and traumas. But in some situations like you just explained, some of the changes can be incredibly quick, especially things like with pain. Pain that wasn't created by an accident. If you have a car crash and you break bones, that's going to take time to heal. But often so much with pain is emotional. And I remember, I talked about back in 2002 when I was riddled with pain. I remember back then, I went to a retreat in Thailand, and that's where I first came across EFT. And the therapist there that did hypnotherapy, acupuncture, and EFT was telling me that my pain was emotional. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like this guy from Northern England where men are men and sheep are scared. And I bought an X-ray. I said, look at my X-ray. That is a physical issue there. That's mechanical. But no, within a few months, I began to see things differently. And now, absolutely, all the pain I was experiencing was because of the way I was in the world, the way I saw myself in the world. Pain issues basically is not feeling strong enough to do something. And depending on where it is in the body, but that is the theme. Not strong enough to hold on to something, not strong enough to bite back, not strong enough to stick up for yourself when someone's attacking you, not strong enough to get something out of your life or somebody or some job. The pain and the location is not an accident. And often, we can get amazing results pretty quickly with pain.
Yeah, fascinating. And what's interesting is, at the beginning of this work, all this kind of work that I do, I would have never believed that this is possible. I was probably the biggest skeptic. And then you experience it and you're like, right, these things do actually work. And then, of course, you want to give the gift. So share with us, what is the matrix, what you call the matrix, and what exactly does reimprinting mean?
Okay. Well, just picking up on something you said then about you'd never believed it would work. And the thing is with the EFT Matrix, we're enculturated to believe from the day we're born, basically, that if you get sick, you need a doctor, you need medication. And so that's why the placebo effect has such a great effect with medication. Nobody was brought up, but certainly not in the Western world, to believe that tapping on yourself is going to heal you. It doesn't matter. It works anyway. So when people think like, oh, do I have to believe in this? No, you don't, because nobody did. I didn't believe in it when I started. You didn't, no. But it works anyway. The Matrix, you ask the perception of that. Is there a connection with Keanu Reeves in the film? In a way, but I'm certainly not seeing them all connected to a big machine being harvested for our organs or whatever the idea was there. No, the Matrix is it's just universal consciousness, simple as that. So depending on the religion, the culture, the native Indians of America would call it the web. In India, where I've just come back from, the fields, the Akashic fields. Where else can we go? The quantum scientists, they call it the nature's mind of God. In the Middle Ages, this science and religion, it's like, okay, scientists will do science, religion, church, you do the religion stuff, and it's split up. What's happened now with quantum physics is they've realized, even just down to the simple experiment, whether something's been observed or not, it will be wave or particle. Has come to the conclusion, basically, that there has to be a consciousness in the universe to make the whole of quantum physics to work. So they call it, nature's mind, the mind of God. I was brought up for 16 years of my life as a Catholic. I would call it God. Even though as a child, God to me was this angry man sat in a cloud, big white beard, dished out lightning and thunder, which of course is just some symbolic, fear thing that the Catholic religion like to make everybody fearful. But that to me, of course, it doesn't matter what the religion is. God is just a consciousness in the universe. Somebody said recently, "Oh, so Star Wars, that would be the Force, wouldn't it?" Absolutely. So all we're talking about with the Matrix is universal consciousness, all connected to this field throughout the universe. So there's nothing new there, but I just like the term, the Matrix. And the reimprinting, the key thing to understand about so many of our habits, behaviors, in the first 6 years of our lives, we're primarily in delta and theta. First 2 years in delta, between 2 and 6 in theta, we're in a hypnotic state. And it's not so much what our parents teach us, it's what we observe and we see. Okay? We see their behaviors and mannerisms, how they interact with people, with wives, with the children, and we're just taking that on board. It's a super learning state where we take it all on board. We literally imprint it upon, and it's through observation. So reimprinting, obviously there's so many huge amount of things that we learn, how to walk and talk and clean and eat and clean our teeth, and a vast amount of vocabulary, but also we pick up on the negative beliefs of our parents. Whatever their beliefs and their bad habits and their mannerisms that are negative, we're going to pick up those as well. And that's as back to Bruce Lipton, as he explains, that's why so many people, where so many diseases, pass through family generations, not because they're handing down dodgy genes, they're handing down dodgy behaviors and belief systems that you pick up. So you're going to end up, if you react the same as your parents, you're going to end up with the same illnesses and diseases. Simple example, if your mother's very anxious all the time, how often have you come across this with clients where the mother's anxious, the client becomes anxious, so they're going to end up with the same kind of problems. So reimprinting then is locating these unhealthy patterns, these unhealthy beliefs, and changing them into positive beliefs, and that's Matrix Reimprinting.
Thank you. And you mentioned the is it Akashic records, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And
I think I was pronouncing it incorrectly as well, so don't worry.
And so it makes me kind of wonder, these memories in the field, if you will, is it actually like in the brain, or are those memories in the field?
Well, I mean, scientifically, it's been known for many, many years, even down to the experiments of what the Nazis did back in the Second World War, that you can remove parts of the brain but you still have memory. The whole brain regenerates, and I've never been able to find this out. I know the eyes and stomach lining can regenerate within days, and parts of the body 7 years. Somewhere in that between days and 7 years, the brain is a completely new brain. all the cells die and replace, but you still have the memory. Okay, so it's been known scientifically for many, many years. It's actually not the brain that has the memory; it just appears that way. And then the other idea that which I've caught onto and believed for a long time was the idea of cellular memory, that our cells hold on to memory. But again, my hero Bruce Lipton explained it very well, that he basically says that the memory is not in the cell; it's in the field. We all have receptors on our cells, unique to. I have Karl Dawson self receptors. You have very Kogan, is that
Yes.
self receptors? You pick up your information from the field, and to me it becomes so obvious when you do EFT and Matrix. It's like you're right now, you're calm. Okay, think about the people listening to this. You're calm. Think about a bad memory. Don't go into it too deeply. I don't want you to get upset, but just think about a bad thing that happened. You begin to experience it. Now, if it was held in the cells or in the brain, you would feel it all the time. But it's, to me, the way I see that the memory is literally these parts of ourselves just in our local fields that sometimes get triggered and we re-experience that. On an extreme example with therapy, we talk about people with multiple personalities, where their traumas were so repeated, and their echoes, the echoes term we use for that younger self, that there's so dense energy that literally when this energy comes into the body, it's like it can literally change the physiology. Yeah. How many of you listeners know can be triggered, like back with the parents, they go back for Christmas and suddenly they get triggered and they feel like that child again, even though the successful people with holding down incredible jobs, but you go home for Christmas and suddenly you feel like a little child again because you revisit that energy of the child. So that's, I just think whether people believe this concept, I just find it easy to understand how we work. It's just like we have certain memories in our fields, and certain things trigger the memories back into it. We re-experience it, and it's as simple as that. Once you actually use EFT and Matrix, the evidence becomes overwhelming. It's something, we're talking energy, we can't prove it. People can't even explain how electricity works. They don't understand electricity. We can use it, they don't understand it. But when you work with this day in day out, you just see it. It becomes so self-evident. It's just obvious. So that's the way we see it. Yeah. At times people say, well, why am I constantly anxious? It's, well, because you've globalized that issue that much that every day of your life you're triggered, so that you're constantly experiencing these early memories and that energy. Talk about your anxiety. Anxiety is actually the energy of the trigger. The thing happens in your life where you feel rejected, or you feel that you don't fit in, or you're overwhelmed, or you can't do something. You start to feel that energy, which we call anxiety, but actually that energy is connected to a memory. Yeah. So once we've globalized it by keep attracting and creating these events over and over again, we can get to a point where we're in a constant state of anxiety now, because every day we're facing, there's a perception we're facing that issue constantly. Does that make sense, Karen?
It does. And it brings up another question, if it's okay, which is the concept of patterns, Karl. Patterns. So,
yeah.
Because you kind of just said it brings it kind of every day. And so I know that many of my clients, when they first come to me, there are certain patterns in their life that just keep showing up, whether it's in a relationship or in their business, right? One of the clients I'm working with now, he said yesterday, my pattern is that I need to create these disasters in my life, right? Like falling down in a ditch for me to kind of get back up, and then I have, even more success. But of course, that's not sustainable, and it's exhausting, and it's not healthy for the body. So tell us a little bit about what are these patterns?
Well, we all do that, with our different belief systems, because whatever that belief is, and what I've come to find is that each of us have a very, very specific belief. Like, we all have the core belief we're not good enough. Okay, but that is just too global to me. We have very specific beliefs. Like my core belief is I'm always second best to the top dog. And I've recreated that through my childhood, as being the second best to the gang leader, even with my marriage, marrying a very powerful, successful woman. within work, I create that over and over again. So whatever that belief is, you will keep, talk about, we attract, we create, we look for proof. There's three distinct different ways of doing that. And I think part of what's happened is because we're stuck in that moment where we made the decision, it's almost like we keep recreating it over and over again, that then we can kind of get completion on that thing. Yeah. And that's what we get with Matrix. We allow to complete it. So, once you complete these memories, it's like you don't have to keep running these patterns anymore, keep running these negative beliefs. It's finished. So, that's part of the power of what we do.
And I believe that is the very definition of freedom.
Yeah.
And it correlates with freedom of choice, because when we're not running that old pattern anymore, when we're more conscious, if you will, and that energy has left our body, we are able to be more objective when things come up and to make even better decisions. And I believe to access our heart's intuitive guidance as well, so things can be even easier for us moving forward.
Exactly, yeah. Because when you keep running these patterns, I mean, it's just like whatever my issue is, your issue, the other listener's issue is. Once you push that button, you react just like a robot. You suddenly go off the scale. You're just like, "Rah!" You go crazy, you go mad, you get angry, get depressed, and it's just like completely out of conscious awareness and conscious control. And so I find that one of the most fascinating parts of what you do. I love helping people to find what these very specific beliefs are. It's incredible. How we can attract and create it over and over again. I'll give you. I'll have to go pretty quickly with this, but what I found out about this one belief, as I call it, in Matrix, it was actually a friend of mine I've known many years. She'd recently been promoted within a company. She was a PA in a company and got promoted to the CEO of the company. Comes to Christmas, she was okay. She carried on the job for 3 weeks, but then stopped for Christmas. And often, I'm sure as you know, and many people listening will understand, when you stop for Christmas, you come out of that fight and flight response that you can be in constantly. And that's when a lot of people get sick. Holidays, Christmas, because you come out of that. And also, a lot of the emotional stuff will come up when you come out of the fight and flight response. So like soldiers that when they're in the war zone, they're okay because they're in a constant state of vigilance and anxiety. It's when they come home, the danger's gone, then all the shit comes on to roost. And anyway, so we have a technique to get to these early memories. And the first memory was, there's a little girl, she's crying in bed. And when we go and ask the little girl why she's crying, she said, I've got to go to Grandma's tomorrow on the south coast of England, and Grandma doesn't love me. Went to the next memory. She's in the garden. She's 3 years old. She's just in the garden with her brother and sister who's a bit older than her. And as she revisits the memory, she sees that she walks in front of the swing, and the swing hits her in the head. So what becomes relevant when I ask her about the belief is, when things are going well, I'll screw it up for everybody else. That became the belief. So be in the garden, having fun. Everybody's having fun. She screwed it up for everybody. Going on holiday to Grandma's house. She was screwed up for everybody. Getting this promotion. It's going well. She's going to screw it up for the family. She's not going to be able to do this and lose a job. Memory after memory. She did like 25 sessions. This controlled the whole life. She got a job in a bank. Loved the job, loved the team. After a few weeks, the books didn't balance. And we had to stay behind, and she'd made a mistake. So then she begins to worry about it. A few weeks later, it happens again. Everybody has to stay behind. She's made the mistake again. She ends up with anxiety, depression, on medication for both. But again, it's not all law of attraction, but it's when something happens, she makes it mean, things are going well. I'm going to screw it up for everybody else. Memory after memory. She got pregnant. Other family, young children, really excited. The baby died. She lost the baby. And she blamed herself because she'd had a termination when in her teens. And said, this is, punishment. Everybody was excited. She screwed it up for everybody. And this all came back to the earliest moment she went to. She was born on Christmas Eve. Her brother and sister were really excited. They got to 3 and 4 years old. And she came along on Christmas Eve and she screwed Christmas up for everybody else. And you think, well, how can a baby make those decisions? And I'm sure you've seen this, Vered, in the work you do. Yeah, we're making these decisions in the womb. We're making decisions the day we were born, and it just carries on and on. But very specific decisions, and then that specific. I've had lots of people might have the belief when things are going well, suddenly everything's going to go wrong. That's not what this girl does. This girl does, when things are going well, she'll screw it up for everybody else. They're so precise how you recreate that. It's with precision. So, that's how it works. Just going changing that perception is what we can do with Matrix Reimprinting. And we don't have to keep running that pattern anymore.
And what happened, if you don't mind, when she shifted that, when she got the truth?
Well, it's funny. We've known her many, many years. And after she did all this work, it wasn't with me. I don't see clients anymore. I got to see a practitioner. The responsibility of EFTMRA in training. I don't have time for clients anymore. So she worked with a practitioner, and it was a lot of sessions. And we used to invite her out quite a lot. And she might come out once or twice a year. Once she'd done all this work, we started seeing a lot more of her. And I said, Diana was the name. And I said, Diana, we used to ask you to come out all the time, and you never used to come out. I said, well, you know why? I said, no, why? He said, well, I used to, your gang always seems so happy. I always thought if I came out with you, I'd screw it up for everybody. Yeah. So you see how it can manifest with work, with family, with children. And having changed that belief, it completely changed her life. I mean, she started, that's just in one aspect. But, she got off the anxiety and depression medication. She became more sociable. And just like in many, many ways, her life changed because of that belief. But you can see how a belief can manifest, in relationships, in friendships, in health, in psychological issues. They manifest everywhere, like the weeds just popping up everywhere. But it all comes back to those beliefs.
That's right, which is why, I love your book and your work, right? Transform your beliefs, and you will absolutely transform your life, your body, your relationships, your work or business, the whole bit. So, Karl, thank you from my heart for this divine work, for this such important work in our world, and sharing it with many trainers and practitioners so that we can share that with people and help them create some more freedom, mental, emotional freedom in their own life. How can people learn more about your programs and all the wonderful work that you do?
Okay, so at the moment, we've got two main trainers in America. You can leave the details. We've got Craig Wiener and Alina Frank, and you train with them. I'm hoping actually next year to come over to America to do some training with Matrix. And there's two people I want to work with to get some more trainers in America. But it is a live course, but we do have EFT practitioners in America. And EFT trainers and Matrix Imprinting trainers. So you can leave some details for people with those. Just I want to share with you, because you teach a lot of coaches and professional people, is that correct to my understanding? It talks about being in India recently. And one of the helpers that was there, he's actually a coach, and he does a lot of coaching. And on the course that I ran there, he had CEOs from Siemens, from Toyota, and from Bosch. They was like some of the top owners of companies, so top directors of these huge, big international companies. And they said, we just like being Indian. They've always understood energy, and they said there's a big movement now with a lot of companies in India to go back to understanding of energy, because they kind of got swayed with the old modern medical stuff and chemicals and all that rubbish. I shouldn't say that, but anyway. And they're going back to the understanding of energy. But they kind of get it inherently. Being Indian, they understand the Vedic, Ayurveda. Even the origin of acupuncture was actually from India, not China. So yeah, it's something that it might sound strange, it might look strange, but it's actually, it's fun, it's effective, and just so easy to learn. So yeah, I mean, there's the book, but to be a practitioner, it is a case of attending a live course with one of our trainers.
Yeah, thank you. And as you mentioned, I trained with, Alina Frank and Dr. Craig Weiner, who are excellent. Um, and just very quickly around your point around kind of the CEOs that are more open
Mm,
around learning around energy. I train CEOs. I'm a speaker with Vistage Worldwide, and I do their corporate training on
wonderful.
mindset and resilience. And there absolutely is an opening. Sometimes, they're a little bit skeptical at first, thinking it's kind of pseudoscience, and then when they have an experience of it themselves, which they do
Yeah,
in the work that I do, then they begin to open
yeah,
up and be like, to suspend any disbelief and, and say, maybe, I experienced a shift. So, there must be something to this. Yeah, I don't,
yeah,
really get it,
absolutely.
but I get that it works because I feel differently. Yeah,
Yeah. And in a way, be so dismissive. It's like, no, this is not going to work for me. This won't work. This is crazy. And then when it does work, it's like, God, yeah, it just worked. Yeah, but these CEOs are thinking though, how many days are lost, to things like pain, to anxiety, and all of the common problems that they're losing millions and millions from these big companies because of with things like if you had a practitioner within the companies, then it saves so much sick time. So they're realizing now that it's well worth looking into and getting practitioners on board.
exactly. And
Wonderful.
radiating even more love into the field. And, that has an effect on everyone and everyone's family and community. And it's just a wonderful ripple effect as you have
Yeah.
created for us in this world. So, Karl, thank you again for sharing your time, your wisdom, your heart with the world. I absolutely believe that you are transforming our planet.
Oh, thank you, Bert. It's very kind of you. And thank you for inviting me to speak with you today.